All right, today I want to talk to you guys and gals a little bit about lagging muscle groups. And what better muscle to talk about than arms, biceps. For me, my biceps have historically lagged largely due to a powerlifting background and always putting them at the end of workouts when I do them for many, many years. And now that I'm working on physique, I'm having to address these things. So let's talk a little bit about that strategy and how this applies to a lot of you, because this could apply to any muscle. In my case, it's biceps. For you, it could be delts. It could be your calves. It could be your lats, right? It could be whatever your most lagging muscles are. And one of the things that I'm going to say is that if you have a muscle that is definitely lagging behind, we really can't rely on compound movements to correct it. In other words, I think chin-ups and weighted chin-ups are fantastic. In fact, you guys have seen me do some pretty heavy weights on weighted chins for a lot of reps, considering my body weight. Yet it didn't fully catch my biceps up. For someone who doesn't have lagging biceps, some weighted chin-ups and getting really strong at them will do a lot. It can do a lot for them. But when we have muscles that are lagging for us personally, whether it's been our overall programming, been our priorities, our genetics, whatever it is that has caused that muscle to lag behind, when we get to that point, it starts to become a good idea to say, look, I might need to do multiple isolation exercises for that muscle. And I would say that a muscle that's not lagging, we probably don't need to think in those terms, other than occasionally delts if you really need big delts, because they have three completely different, almost unrelated functions. And it's a very big muscle. So that one could be different, but any other muscle, whether it's your pecs, your biceps, your calves, if they're not lagging, even on a split program, you may only need one isolation exercise, right? Sometimes none. Sometimes if you have a muscle that is so dominant, really your big compound movements can handle it. Perfect example, let's again use me as an example. My lats. I don't need to ever think about how am I going to isolate my lats. I'm just going to row and do weighted pull-ups, and my lats really overshadow the rest of my body. Right, they're my biggest muscle group. So in that case, I'm not worried about it. But let's talk about biceps. So you'll see me through this video. This is all from the same workout. Notice how you'll see me doing standing dumbbell curls. You'll see me doing one-arm dumbbell preacher curls, and you'll see me doing incline curls. So when you look at that, it's like, man, that is every possible angle, right? And they're all done to complete range of motion. Notice on all those exercises, we go all the way till the elbow locks. Right, well, where my elbows lock. Everyone's joints are different. And I bring it all the way until the forearm touches the bicep. Full range of motion, doing three completely different angles, right? We have a bigger movement, the standing curl, which is almost a mid-range. We have the preacher curl, which is really a lower position movement. That's where the most stress is. You have the incline curl, which is really, in a lot of ways, a peak contraction movement, if you do it correctly. Even though it puts the bicep into a stretch position at the bottom, it is not a true, I don't think, ideal lengthened position exercise. You can use the stretch reflex, but it doesn't have as much tension at the bottom due to that arm angle. But that stretch reflex is powerful at the bottom, and that really helps it contract very hard at the top. If you look at the data we have on the stretch reflex, that happens. And a lot of powerlifting coaches use that a lot for powerlifting purposes for certain exercises. We're going to utilize that to get stronger. But in that case, it's every possible angle. So even if you were to go back and look at something like the old positions of flexion, people who go back 20 years ago, they know what I'm talking about. Remember Iron Man magazine? And the writers there used to always have the positions of flexion. You need a mid-range, you need a stretch, and a contracted position exercise to fully develop a muscle. In this case, though, that really is almost that same idea, except all of them put a stretch at the bottom, right? We're always making sure we're getting the lengthened position. Because kind of combining that idea with the data that we have on lengthened position exercises today, we know the lengthened position, if we're going to narrow down one specific part of a movement that contributes the most to hypertrophy, the data is looking like that is the case, not for every muscle necessarily, but as a general rule. So we're kind of playing off of all of that together with what I'm doing here. But normally we would look at this and go, this is probably excessive. Do we really need to take the bicep and do 3 different angles? It's such a simple muscle. And I would say if it's truly lagging for you, the answer is yes, and here's why. And these are all done on their own. So I have an arm day here. So I do a tricep, then a bicep as a superset. So in this case, I'm starting with a curl at the start of a workout. Normally, you wouldn't be doing something like that, right? But if you have a lagging muscle, it's probably a good idea to literally start at least one workout every week with that muscle, right? Directly hitting it. You may need to do 2 or 3 different isolation movements. And here's the thing with that. We know that different movements do not fully have the ability to work every fiber in a muscle. And I think people forget that. When you look at data, certain regions get more hypertrophy. When they've done regional hypertrophy, they find that the same exercises, even like they say they take the lower half of the bicep. Okay, the preacher curl beats the incline curl when they've checked that lower half and the different spots in it on a hypertrophy test, where they've run people for 8 weeks doing one or the other on the exact same program, and then literally do scans of the bicep, the lower half, and those points to see where it grew. It grows the lower part more. Incline, arguably, because I didn't check it in that study, will very well possibly grow the upper part more. Is it a massive difference? No. But here's the thing. If one exercise will grow the upper half of a muscle 10% faster, and another exercise will grow the lower half 10% faster, are we missing out on gains by not doing a bit of both? Because again, in the same thing, we find proximal versus distal, we find the insertion points of a muscle versus the middle of the muscle. Different exercises don't hypertrophy the same. Same thing, we've done a lot of studies like with hamstrings and found certain movement patterns hit the center of the hamstring much more than the tendon area, and some cause a little more hypertrophy down near the tendon, near the knee. So do you see where I'm going with this? If this is the case and you have a muscle that is truly lagging, you may be losing, if half of the muscle will grow 10% faster with a different exercise and possibly both halves. Making sure you're doing both of those could be getting you, a net total of about 5% more muscle growth. Right? If a muscle is truly lagging, 5% more growth over what you're getting is absolutely worth it. And we have to think in those terms if you are really serious about bringing up a muscle that is lagging behind. And that's exactly what you see me doing here, is following that lead, because I know that my biceps need the work. Right? You can look at me and tell they're smaller than the rest of my physique. This is a solution. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys and gals next time.